She slapped him like he didn't matter. But she just slapped the wrong boy. What would you do if you saw this? Tell us where you're watching from. The crack of the slap echoed through first class like a dropped wine glass. Emilio Vega, all of 13 years old, didn't move. His cheek flushed red, but he stood still, just a backpack on his shoulder and a boarding pass crumpled in his hand. "Young man," the flight attendant hissed, "don't make a scene. This seat isn't for you." Her name tag read D. Whitlock, but the authority in her voice sounded like she thought she was judge, jury, and executioner. And in that moment, she was. Passengers stirred, some turning to look, others deliberately staring out windows. No one said a word. The woman sitting in seat 2A, clutching a white leather purse, gave a tight smile. "Probably just a mistake." Emilio didn't respond. He didn't raise his voice or plead. He simply held out his pass. Dana didn't even read it. She just snatched it and shoved it into her pocket. "You'll sit where you belong," she said, pointing toward the back of the plane. "Move." No apology, no explanation, no shame. Emilio turned without protest. He walked past the silent passengers, down the aisle lined with people who wouldn't meet his eyes. The scent of warm towels faded into chemical cleaners the closer he got to the rear. He took the seat next to the lavatory. The cushion was worn, the armrest sticky, and the window fogged with grime. But Emilio didn't care. He opened his backpack, slid out a slim, matte gray smartwatch, and tapped the side screen. His fingerprint scanned. A soft tone followed. "Access granted. SkyTrack Ethics Core. Emergency Delegate Mode. User, E. Vega Administrative Override. Available." For a long second, he just stared. Then, quietly, without looking up, he tapped the command, and the system started to crash. When the screen pulsed green, Emilio didn't flinch. He just watched the numbers start ticking, quiet lines of code cascading across the display like falling rain. One tap. That's all it took. Behind him, the flight attendant laughed lightly with another passenger in first class, completely unaware that the boy she'd humiliated was triggering a silent chain reaction 30,000 feet in the air. 19 airports, 3 major airlines, all monitored by the SkyTrack Ethics Core. And right now, all watching this flight. Emilio's grandfather, Alonso Vega, had built this system to detect and prevent in-flight discrimination. But today, Emilio wasn't just a test subject. Thanks to a signed emergency proxy, issued that very morning, he had full delegate-level access for one flight only. His mission had been to run a shadow test of the system's responsiveness. Instead, the system was about to run for real. He tapped again. Flag status. Activated incident severity. Class A. Discriminatory conduct. Auto protocol. Lock ethics rating. Pending review. Back at the gate, the airline's internal monitor blipped red. Within 90 seconds, 2 other connected flights showed similar anomalies. By minute 3, the airline's ethics score dropped below compliance threshold. By minute 4, automated notices went out to 19 federally governed airports. At minute 5, terminal systems began suspending gate access. Then, the phone call started. Inside the cockpit, a quiet ping alerted the captain. "You are under FAA ethics audit. Do not alter course." Meanwhile, Emilio sat perfectly still, gazing out the window at nothing in particular. No gloating, no satisfaction. Just silence, and one truth. The system worked. Down in Denver, Alonso Vega stared at the alert feed lighting up his laptop. He didn't panic. He recognized the protocol. Then he saw the name tied to the activation. E. Vega, Delegate Mode. Alonso leaned back in his chair. A faint smile crept across his face. They didn't even know who they slapped. At exactly 11:08 a.m. Eastern, A silence settled over the operations floor at Skylift Airways headquarters. Then came the triple ping, one long, two short, signaling a system-wide ethics breach. "Another one?" "No," the compliance officer whispered. "Same flight, but the protocol just escalated." Screens blinked yellow, then orange. A red box began pulsing in the center of the main dashboard. Ethics compliance rating. Below, threshold automatic suspension pending. 19 airports. At Gate 12B in Dallas, a flight was preparing to board. Suddenly, boarding paused. Monitors froze. A staff member made a call and then simply turned to the passengers and said, "We've been instructed to hold." At LAX, another gate agent stared at her screen in disbelief. "They flagged us?" she muttered. "But we've done nothing wrong." That was the point of Skytrack Ethics Core. It didn't just punish individual flights. It flagged the entire ecosystem for systemic failure. And Emilio's report didn't just trigger alarms. It crashed a reputation. In Miami, the VP of Regulatory Affairs nearly dropped his phone. He dialed the emergency FAA liaison. "Are we being investigated?" "Not yet," the voice replied coldly. "But the Vega protocol just activated, and that's above us." Across terminals, $780 million in pending credit lines was now under immediate review. Finance departments froze ticket sale dashboards. Investor hotlines lit up. Stock alerts buzzed on analysts' phones. And yet, in seat 28F, Emilio Vega remained still. He didn't look at his watch again. He didn't even blink when a flight attendant passed, scowling. Because none of this was impulsive. It was procedural. It was precise. It was earned. In Santa Fe, Alonso Vega received a third call in under 10 minutes from the airline's CEO himself. "Mr. Vega, I didn't know your grandson was on that flight. If we had known..." Alonso cut him off. "You didn't need to know who he was. You just needed to treat him like he belonged." And then he hung up. Dana Whitlock was halfway through pouring a sparkling water for seat 2C when the cabin phone rang. She picked up, irritated. "Yes?" A pause. Then, her face paled. "Understood." She hung up and immediately headed for the cockpit. She whispered something to the captain, who looked up sharply. His hand hovered over the dashboard. Passengers began to murmur. Then came the announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to a systems issue, we've been instructed to delay in-air services and maintain current altitude. Thank you for your patience." In the rear, Emilio didn't blink. He could feel the tension shift. He didn't need to watch the crew scramble. He could sense the system working. Back in first class, Dana returned looking less confident. Her walk had changed. She wasn't in charge anymore. She knew it, but she still hadn't connected the dots. Until a senior flight supervisor boarded during an unexpected mid-air reroute stop in Kansas City. The cabin doors opened mid-flight, not something normal passengers ever witness. 2 FAA officers and a representative from the Ethics Compliance Division stepped in. Dana's name was called first. "We need to speak with you privately, now." She tried to smile, but it crumbled fast. In the back, Emilio sat quietly, his hands folded. The supervisor passed him, then paused. "Mr. Vega," he said. Emilio stood. The man nodded with quiet respect. "On behalf of the Department of Transportation, thank you." Passengers started whispering. Some pulled out their phones, and just like that, the power shifted. The boy who was slapped? He wasn't just some kid in the wrong seat. He was the watchdog they didn't see coming. Across the country, headlines broke within the hour. Flight suspended after boy triggers ethics shutdown. 780 Mamauern frozen following in-flight discrimination flag. FAA and Ethics Division launched joint investigation. And inside a quiet Denver office, Alonso Vega turned off the news feed, leaned back, and whispered, "This is only the beginning." By the time Flight 217 touched down in Kansas City, The story was already trending. Who eyes Emilio? Ethics freeze. As Skylift scandal, major outlets picked it up fast. CNN ran a banner. Teen passenger flags, airline for discrimination. 780 miles in contracts frozen. TikTok and YouTube flooded with short clips. Someone had filmed the FAA agents boarding. Someone else caught Dana being escorted off. But no one had footage of Emilio pressing any buttons. Because he hadn't needed to move. He never raised his voice. He never argued. And yet the entire industry was now scrambling to explain what just happened. In New York, a live panel debated it all. "He's just a kid," one guest said. "What power should he really have?" "He didn't create the power," the host replied. "He was entrusted with it, and he didn't abuse it. He used it to call out a broken system." Meanwhile, at 3 major airports, Denver, Seattle, and Atlanta, 74 flights tied to Skylift and its 2 alliance partners were grounded indefinitely pending ethics review. Investor calls were rescheduled. PR firms were fired. And behind closed doors, 4 CEOs held a private emergency call, asking the same question. What is the Vega Protocol exactly, and how far does it reach? Inside Emilio's home, his mom was on the phone with lawyers from the Department of Transportation. His older sister was fielding media inquiries. And Emilio? He was in his room, playing chess online, not because he didn't care, but because the move had already been made. Across the boardroom tables in government buildings, adults scrambled to react. But the boy had already played his hand. And his silence said what no speech ever could. Do better, or lose access. In Santa Fe, Alonso Vega added one more item to his to-do list. Initiate public phase of the Vega Protocol, require industry-wide adoption of the Passenger Fairness Index. This wasn't a story about revenge. It was the beginning of reform. Elliot Raines hadn't slept. As the CEO of Skylift Airways, he'd weathered lawsuits, union strikes, even a mid-air fuel scandal once. But nothing like this. He stood in front of a boardroom full of legal advisors, PR executives, and investor reps. The screen behind him displayed 3 brutal headlines. 780 MMM contracts frozen overnight. Ethics score falls below FAA standard. Passenger Fairness Index demands mandatory compliance. Elliot ran a hand through his silvering hair. So, you're telling me this all started because a teenage boy got slapped? No, one attorney corrected. It started because your crew didn't know who he was and didn't care. Silence. Worse, said the CFO. That boy had full proxy access to the Vega Protocol, and we gave him reason to use it. Across the room, a PR exec tried to soften the blow. We can spin this, Elliot. Say we were unaware, emphasize training gaps, maybe offer a settlement. Stop, Elliot said. His voice dropped. This isn't a PR fix. He knew what they were all thinking. This wasn't about image anymore. This was about access, about infrastructure, about being allowed to land in federal airports. Because when Vega Protocol activated and the Passenger Fairness Index triggered, it didn't just flag Skylift. It flagged their entire code share alliance. And suddenly, no one wanted to partner with them. He opened his laptop. A message from Alonso Vega sat unread. Your airline is now considered ethically non-compliant. Please respond within 48 hours to begin reform negotiations. Failure to comply will result in extended federal restrictions. For the first time in his 28-year career, Elliot Raines didn't feel like a CEO. He felt like a student, and he was being called to the principal's office. Back in Santa Fe, Alonso made no calls. He didn't have to. The system was doing exactly what it was designed to do. Punish arrogance. Reward accountability. 2 days later, the pressure broke. Skylift Airways released a formal statement. We acknowledge the failure of our internal ethics procedures and are committed to systemic change. Effective immediately, we will work under the guidance of the Vega Protocol. The industry watched with bated breath, because this wasn't just a PR move. It was a precedent. Under the Vega Protocol's terms, the airline was required to sign onto the newly launched Passenger Fairness Charter, a framework designed not by government lawyers, but by a team led by Alonso Vega himself. Inside the document were clauses that shook the industry: mandatory ethics audits for all frontline staff, passenger dignity ratings integrated into crew evaluations, real-time behavior tracking through Skytrack Ethics Core, zero-tolerance enforcement for discriminatory behavior with auto-escalation protocols. Some called it overreach. Others called it justice, finally codified. Emilio, still back home, wasn't attending any press conferences. He wasn't even online. He sat in the courtyard with his grandfather, sipping hot chocolate. "Did I do too much?" he asked quietly. Alonso shook his head. "No, mijo. You did what we designed the system to do." He paused. "You reminded the world that respect shouldn't depend on age, wealth, or color. It should be a baseline." Within 48 hours, 3 other airlines reached out to the Vega team voluntarily, asking for early compliance audits. Their reasoning was simple: better to be inside the charter than frozen outside the system. Investors noticed, so did regulators. For the first time in decades, an airline reform wasn't being dictated from Washington, but from the quiet resolve of a boy in seat 28F and a grandfather who believed the sky should belong to everyone. The ink on the Passenger Fairness Charter had barely dried when the resistance began. At first, it was quiet, just whispers in the boardrooms of rival airlines. But it didn't stay quiet for long. One by one, anonymous op-eds started popping up in industry magazines. Do we really need teenagers deciding airline policy? The ethics freeze is hurting business more than helping justice. The Vega Protocol is a power grab, not a solution. It wasn't hard to trace the sentiment. These articles weren't about ethics. They were about money. Skylift's competitors had taken a hit. Flights rerouted, partnerships paused, contracts under review. And, at the center of it all, a 13-year-old boy who never raised his voice, and a grandfather who never asked for credit. Inside a Manhattan boardroom, CEO Miles Redden of Aerogate Alliance leaned forward in his chair. "So we just let Vega define the new rules of aviation?" he snapped. "This isn't justice. It's regulation by algorithm." His COO shifted uneasily. "With respect, Miles, 3 of our partner airports just suspended our onboarding clearances until we respond to the charter. Vega's system isn't optional anymore." Miles slammed the table. "Then we challenge it, legally, publicly. Hit them with every angle we've got. This ends now." By the following week, Vega's team received their first legal threat. A consortium of 5 airlines, none of whom had signed the charter, filed a joint appeal to the FAA, claiming the Passenger Fairness Index constituted unconstitutional third-party interference in federal operations. Alonso read the letter and handed it to Emilio. The boy read it silently, then asked, "What happens if they win?" Alonso smiled faintly. "They won't. But they have money, lawyers, power." "They have noise," Alonso said. "But we have something more dangerous." "What?" "Proof. And passengers." Meanwhile, Emilio faced his own backlash. A classmate sent him a text that stung. "Nice job getting half the flights canceled. My mom missed her job interview." Another student at school whispered, "That's the kid who took down an airline." Even a teacher made a sarcastic remark. "Let's hope none of us end up on Mr. Vega's naughty list." It wasn't bullying. It was worse. It was isolation. For the first time, Emilio questioned whether silence had been enough, whether he should have spoken, fought louder, defended himself. That night, he asked his grandfather, "Why are they mad at me for something I didn't start?" Alonso looked at him and said, "Because they were comfortable in a system that protected them, and you broke it." "But they're not the enemy," Emilio whispered. "No," Alonso agreed. "But they're still responsible for choosing which side they're on now." The chamber was colder than Emilio expected. The hearing room inside the Department of Transportation was lined with polished wood, flags, and nameplates. Cameras were everywhere, and behind the long panel of microphones sat representatives from the FAA, Ethics Oversight Board, and Commerce Committee. Across the room, the CEOs from Aerogate, Ventrafly, and 4 other airlines sat together, flanked by legal teams. Their faces were tight, practiced. Their message would be simple. The Vega Protocol was an overstep. Dangerous. Unconstitutional. But Emilio wasn't here to argue law. He was here to speak truth. Mr. Emilio Vega, a woman from the Ethics Board announced, "We understand you initiated the flight-level flagging that triggered the recent suspension of $780 million in airline partnerships. Is that correct?" Emilio adjusted the mic. "Yes, ma'am. And you are 13. "Yes." A few soft chuckles came from the corporate side. Emilio heard them, but didn't flinch. He pulled a small folder from his backpack. "I didn't flag that flight because I was angry," he said. "I flagged it because it violated 3 out of 5 criteria in the Passenger Fairness Index, which, according to your own FAA compliance manual, are grounds for escalation." He passed the folder to the nearest board member. Inside, screenshots, logs, transcripts from the crew's in-cabin audio, time-stamped behavior data from the Skytrack Ethics Core. Not emotion. Evidence. "What this system does," Emilio continued, "isn't punish people. It protects passengers. People like my mom, my neighbors, the woman who got told her voice was too loud for first class." He looked directly at the CEOs. "I don't want control. I want accountability." Silence fell. Then came the most unexpected voice. An older FAA official with decades behind her eyes. She leaned forward. "Mr. Vega," she said, "how did you get access to this system?" Emilio didn't blink. "My grandfather created it," he said. "And when he gave me access, he told me one thing: never use it unless you see someone get treated like they don't belong." He looked around. That's exactly what happened. Outside, the story hit news feeds within minutes. 13-year-old testifies before FAA, leaves airline speechless. "I don't want control. I want accountability. Emilio Vega." Inside the room, no rebuttals came. The legal teams packed their files in silence. Because when truth walks in quietly, it doesn't have to shout. 72 hours after Emilio's testimony, the entire industry shifted. Not with fireworks, not with press releases, but with code. The FAA sent a directive to 19 federal airports. Effective immediately, all participating carriers must demonstrate compliance with the Passenger Fairness Index before continuing operations under federal chartered routes. No warning, no extensions, just a digital gate that wouldn't open unless your ethics score met the threshold. Skylift barely made the cut. 3 other airlines didn't. They were removed from the Skytrack system by sunrise, effectively grounded from key routes that powered 60% of their annual revenue. A quiet tsunami had hit the tarmac. At Vega's home in Santa Fe, Emilio sat by the window, watching the sunrise over the desert. His phone buzzed, but he didn't check it. Across the table, Alonso opened his laptop and showed him the dashboard. 19 airports, active Passenger Fairness Index, live charter compliance, 100%. It was done. "You rewired the system," Alonso said gently. "And you did it without raising your voice." Emilio nodded, barely smiling. "I just wanted people to be treated right." "They will be, because now the system listens." Meanwhile, news outlets were calling it. The Vega Protocol is no longer a backdoor. It's the new standard. Airlines race to retrofit ethics systems after Vega testimony goes viral. Even the teacher who once mocked Emilio in class pulled him aside. "I was wrong. You're the kind of kid that changes things." Emilio didn't answer. He just looked out the window again, toward the sky. Because something in him knew. Justice shouldn't be loud. It should be built so well, it works even when you're silent. 2 weeks later, Washington moved. The FAA, alongside the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, and the Department of Transportation, issued a joint statement that would change the course of the airline industry. Beginning next quarter, all federally licensed carriers operating within or in partnership with U.S. airspace must integrate the Passenger Fairness Index into their operational framework. Ethics compliance will be a requirement for safety certification and international routing clearance. The mandate would affect 120 airlines, 48 countries, and more than 2,000 daily routes. And at the heart of it was a system built in a sunlit garage in Santa Fe, New Mexico, activated by a 13-year-old boy with a quiet sense of right and wrong. They called it the Vega Provision. In legal documents, it appeared as a technical compliance clause. In headlines, it read differently. FAA approves global passenger ethics law, inspired by Emilio Vega. New flight standards built on silence, dignity, and one act of courage. It wasn't just a win. It was a reset button for how passengers were seen, not as cargo, not as profit, but as humans. And the system was now watching. At the Vega home, Emilio stood in the backyard while reporters waited on the curb. He wasn't giving interviews today. He just looked up at the sky. His mother stepped out with a mug of tea, brushing his hair gently. "You proud of what you did?" "I didn't think it'd go this far," Emilio admitted. "It went just far enough." She paused. "You didn't just change how people fly. You changed how they're treated before they even get on the plane." He looked at her. "Was that enough?" She smiled. "It's never enough, but it's a start." Later that evening, Alonso updated the system one last time. Under the Vega protocol, he added a new layer. Legacy clause. Passenger protections shall not be revoked without federal oversight. Then he did something he hadn't done before. He gave Emilio full, permanent admin rights, not as a temporary safeguard, but as a symbol, a reminder to the next generation that systems aren't built to last forever. They're built to evolve with those brave enough to speak when it matters. Gate 3B at JFK International looked exactly the same. Same dull blue carpet, same overhead voice calling boarding groups, same airline, Skylift. But Emilio wasn't 13 anymore. He was 15, taller, calmer, and carrying a tablet instead of a backpack. He walked quietly toward the same first-class section, seat 1A, the very spot he had been slapped for sitting in 2 years ago. The flight attendant at the door looked up and smiled warmly. "Good morning, Mr. Vega. Welcome aboard." Emilio gave a small nod. No one questioned him. No one doubted he belonged. Because now, he was the system. As he settled into the seat, the new SkyTrack display lit up on the headrest in front of him. Ethics Index verified. Cabin score, 98.6, compliant. The seatbelt sign dinged softly overhead. Passengers trickled in. Then came a moment Emilio hadn't planned for. A woman, mid-40s, sharply dressed, boarded with a child, maybe 10 years old, with nervous eyes. Their boarding passes were mixed up. The child hesitated near first class, looking at her mother. The same flight attendant from earlier, still smiling, bent down gently. "It's okay, sweetheart," she said. "Your seat is right here next to me. You're safe." Not just tolerated, welcomed. As the plane taxied, Emilio glanced out the window. Clouds slowly swallowed the tarmac. A man across the aisle leaned over. "You work in tech?" he asked politely. Emilio paused, then nodded. "Sort of. I feel like I've seen you before." Emilio smiled. "Maybe in the news, a while ago." The man thought a moment. "Wait, Emilio Vega? The Vega Protocol?" Emilio gave a half smile. "That's me." The man blinked, then laughed in disbelief. "Well, damn, I should have packed a suit." Mid-flight, the captain's voice broke in over the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're proud to be one of the first carriers to operate under the new Passenger Fairness Index. Our thanks to Mr. Emilio Vega, who's on board today, for helping make that possible." A quiet wave of murmurs swept the cabin. Emilio felt all eyes, briefly, but not unkindly. No applause, no spotlight, just acknowledgement. And that was enough. When the flight landed in Denver, Emilio waited for most passengers to exit first. As he stood, the flight attendant approached. "You know," she said, "I read the incident report from 2 years ago. I wasn't on that flight, but I remember how bad it got." He nodded slowly. She added, "We use your system every day now. We have to. It changed how we're trained, how we're audited, how we look at people." Then she said the one thing no one had said to him directly until now. "Thank you for holding us accountable." He didn't respond with words, just a quiet nod. Sometimes that's all it takes. As Emilio stepped out of the jet bridge, Alonso was waiting. Same old canvas jacket, same quiet smile. "How was the flight?" he asked. "Peaceful," Emilio replied. Alonso gave him a look. "Peaceful is rare." "I know," Emilio said. "That's why we protect it." They walked in silence for a bit. Just two people crossing an airport, but everyone around them, staff, crew, executives, watched them pass with a certain quiet respect. Not fear, not fame, recognition. And just before the screen faded to black, the words appeared. "The Vega protocol is now active in 19 U.S. airports, 6 international hubs, and 53 domestic carriers. Emilio Vega remains the youngest person to author an FAA-approved ethics framework in aviation history." Sometimes, the smallest voice leaves the loudest legacy. Now we want to hear from you. Have you ever been judged just for where you sat, what you wore, or how you looked? Or maybe you witnessed someone stand up quietly and change everything. Drop your thoughts in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. Your story might inspire our next Telltales video. And if this story moved you even just a little, share it with someone who believes justice doesn't always need to shout.